team, we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. Hell yeah. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch. And I know if I'm going to have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're going to see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're going to see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. Right? That's the team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Yes, we will. Either we come together or we will all surely hang separately, whether it be now or 10 years from now. Eventually, everybody will have their day. So if we don't stand together for our freedom. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. It is Sunday, April 17th, 2011. And I have a bunch of stuff to get into. You guys probably might have heard me guest hosting on JJ's show, Against the Wall, just now with John Preston from 3 to 5. If you didn't, I'll give you a quick recap. On Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, I was awoke to two FBI agents, or who said they were FBI agents. They wouldn't give me business cards, and they weren't carrying any guns. But when I did call to complain to the FBI and to double check and see if they were agents, I never got a call back, so I guess that's a yes. Anyway, they stopped and they wanted to know if I had ever been contacted by homegrown terrorism and if I knew that somebody was really going to try to destroy the country and attack the country. Would I, really, would I say something? Meaning, like, if somebody had come to me, would I rat on them and say, oh my God, there's a terrorist? First of all, terrorists wouldn't come to me because they're created by the CIA. And I looked at him and I just said, like, a real bad guy or like one of these fake ones? And they said, no. I think they understood what I meant. They said, no, a real bad guy. And I said, oh, no, of course. If I knew there was a real threat, like a country invading or, some real, I won't say the word terrorist because that's so overblown, but some real negative threat against the country, how I would know before they would, you got me, you guys are the FBI, but apparently they wanted to know that if I knew of some foreboding like danger, would I say something? Which, of course, if somebody was going to really destroy and kill innocent civilians, of course I would try to stop it. Anybody in their right mind would. But that's not what they were getting at. They were, insinuating almost like it was kind of creepy. But they weren't intimidating. They weren't mean or nasty. They were actually very polite. So they've obviously been well versed in how to disarm people through like verbally and through body language and stuff. There, in no way did I ever feel threatened by the two of them, which was it was disarming. I had woken up and I was expecting the maintenance people, and I kind of peeked out, and I wasn't sure who it was, but when I opened the door, it's when they said they were FBI and they wanted to speak, and I had the presence of mind enough to step outside and close my door and not let anybody, I won't let anybody come in my apartment. I don't care who you are. So I was able to at least have the presence of mind to do that, and they were only here for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It wasn't very long. The conversation was very civil. They tried to laugh and joke a few times with me. Obviously, that's to try to disarm you and try to calm you down or try to keep you, keep the situation at a regular, But they did ask questions. They wanted to know stuff about me. Not really invasive questions, actually. Pretty much intel gathering questions, but not even super intel gathering questions. That's why I was trying to figure out, because I was half asleep waking up while I was talking to them, and I wished I had the presence of mind to ask them, what would make you think? I don't know why I didn't say what would make you think I would know if there was something going on, but literally they caught me off guard, and I was literally like, as I was talking to them, as I said in the other show, I have a dog, a tiny little dog, and she tried, she'll run out the door. So I had grabbed her when I opened the door, so I got her in my arm. I'm wearing sweatpants and a T-shirt, no shoes, nothing. I'm in my socks. And these guys, as I guess they're trained, they always try to take a step into the door. And that's when I was like, no, we can do this outside. And I kind of put my hand up, my free hand, and we walked outside. Again, that was the only time they ever tried to do I guess intimidating or whatever, but they were very laid back. They were not like you see in the movies where the feds are wearing sunglasses and they're all up in your grill. In fact, these guys, neither one of them had sunglasses on. They looked me in the eyes when they spoke to me, but they wouldn't give me a business card. In fact, they basically asked me questions, but then when I said, well, sure, if you get, in fact, when I was on the Alex Jones show about this on Friday too, and when I first spoken to Alex, as I spoke to him right after it happened on the phone, I was still a little pumped up, and I couldn't remember. The adrenaline flows. Sometimes it's hard to remember the details. You have to wait until your brain calms down. And while I replayed this before I went on a show, I kept replaying the conversation because it just happened. So it was eating at me, and I kept replaying the conversation over and over and over again in my head. And I had asked for a business card. In fact, I had asked twice, and both times they had kind of blown it off and said, just call the hotline number. Now, when I called the FBI office down here later on, and I spoke to the whoever, I guess the front desk person or whatever, I said, is it normal for them not give out business cards? And she said, no, usually they always give out cards, and usually feds and cops like to, they always have cards for themselves. Even cops nowadays, patrolmen have their own cards. So it's kind of odd that they didn't give me a card, which is kind of creepy, because then that begs the question of, if they weren't really feds, were they New World Order types? Were they fake feds? Could they have been CIA? And you don't know. Could they have been NSA? Could they have been Defense Intelligence? You don't know. They wouldn't, they could have been just training too. They could have been fed, FBI in training. But the one guy definitely had military bearing. The one guy I spoke to. The other guy, not so much. He was kind of not really out of shape, but he was kind of what I guess in the he wasn't fat, he wasn't overweight, but he wasn't in tip-top shape, whereas the other guy, he had the crew cut. He not huge, but decent physique. You could tell he exercised and he worked out and kept himself in shape. He was very tight, high and tight with the way he dressed. So he was not, he was AJ squared away. He wasn't slacking. Like, his shirt wasn't sticking out. The other one was more of the laid-back one. But neither one of them had firearms on them. So, I mean, it begs the question, were they really FBI agents? So that's when I called, and I called the local office, and I said, look, I want to know if these guys are real FBI agents, because if they're not, then it's creepy, and then you guys should know that there's somebody running around posing as FBI agents. Otherwise, if you guys can tell me who they really are, then at least I know they were real agents. All right, guys, we're going to break. When I get back, I'll finish the story, and then I'm going to get into a few other things. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from Federal Jack. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Before we went to the break, I was telling you about a experience I had on Friday. Anyway, so long story short, they didn't seem very they weren't rude, they weren't threatening in any way. Honestly, I really, really think that they were I think somebody called them and said that we were some sort of extremist organization. And the reason I say that is because I've actually had this happen before with the whole fluoride thing. Because we about 6 months ago we put up a couple posters, and I literally just taped them to like the outside of payphone, the little payphone enclosures and stuff, and we had I got pulled over by the local police, the night shift, and they said, oh, well, we got a call that there was an extremist group running around putting up flyers. And I was like, an extremist group? And she was like, yeah, that's exactly what they said they told us. And we were able to we actually recorded the when we got pulled over. It's up on one of our YouTube channels. But they were very cordial. In fact, they were really horrified when we educated them about fluoride and stuff, and I gave them some Oath Keepers stuff. And honestly, thinking back, if I wasn't caught off guard on Friday, I would have actually said to these the feds, hey, hold on, let me give you some Oath Keepers DVDs, check this out. But again, I was caught so off guard because I was half asleep. I literally woke up to them knocking on my door. That when you're caught off guard like that, you really don't you don't react like you think you would. And I've been beating myself up all weekend saying, oh, I should have said this or I should have said that. But, there was no – they weren't rude or anything to me. They weren't threatening to me. They didn't come at me – and I'm not saying, I wasn't scared of them. I'm saying they didn't come at me in a threatening manner. They didn't – they weren't like, hey, shut the F up or whatever. They were just wondering if and maybe they were feeling me out to see, if I would – if they could, sheep dip me or something, which they can't because I don't play that game. I didn't get in this to take, sides with them, and I didn't get in this to be a martyr or anything like that. I got in this to educate people and tell people what's up and let people know what's going on, because the more people wake up, the more, the better off life will be for everybody. We can actually work towards having a good planet and a good future and stuff, rather than, being constantly at war and spending bazillions of dollars and having this huge police state at home. But the reason I believed they were sent or they were called by somebody local is because just how the line of questioning, the things that weren't asked are just as telling as the things that were asked. Their responses. They brought up the fact that I've gone to city council meetings in the past. So the only way they could have known where I lived, and the only way they could have known my real name, was from those city council records. And for them to bring it up twice, and for me to know that that's the only way they could have known where my name and nothing is affiliated with FederalJack.com. Okay, there is more than just me that that works on Federal Jack. Okay, and although I am the webmaster and one of the major contributors, I don't own the site. So my name's not attached to it. My phone number is not attached to it. My IP address is not attached to it. There's nothing attached to the site that you could trace back to me. Okay, and I always kept it somewhat anonymous, and I still use my nickname rather than my real name, and I do it to protect my wife. You know, she doesn't have a stake in this fight, so she doesn't. I mean, she does, but she doesn't. She can't defend herself. So, and that's not me saying it's because she's a woman. She's got medical issues. So the point is, she's not where she can defend herself, but she can't defend herself as easily as most people can. So I don't want to put her in any imminent danger and have somebody threaten her, because I know how these agencies work. So to me, they really didn't ask me questions about federaljack.com. They didn't ask me questions about the website. They said, we know you have a website, and then they brought up the city council meetings, and they brought up the city council meetings twice, which leads me to believe that that somebody in the city council, i.e. the mayor of North Miami Beach, called them. And I don't have 100% proof of that, but it's just a gut feeling I have. And again, I say that because that's the kind of stuff he does. He's called code enforcement on other people. There's a blogger that lives in North Miami, and she blogs all about his criminal activities and his political exploits and everything else. And she and I hooked up, and she emails me, links to her articles and like a little snippet of the article, and I put that up on the site, and then people can go to her website. And I guess I've made his name a Google search term because I've hooked her site to my site, and she gets a ton of hits now. People all over the world have seen how corrupt this guy is. I mean, they admit that they've gotten emails from people all over the country telling them, and even from other countries, stating that, hey, fluoride's bad in the water and everything else. But they've said, well, we haven't gotten any emails from anybody in the city itself yet, so we don't consider it a danger. So everybody else is telling them, hey, your house is on fire, your house is on fire, but because somebody in the house isn't saying, hey, the house is on fire, they don't want to admit it. So that's the kind of political leadership that they have here in and I don't live in North Miami Beach. I actually live in a town adjacent to it, but they were in a city adjacent to it, I should say. And he can't send his cops or his, the goons of the town. They can't send their own police. They can't send who he likes to send code enforcement is like who he likes to send and screw with people that have houses and stuff there. Well, he can't do that with me because I don't live in his city, so I don't fall under his jurisdiction. As I said, the reason why we have to go to their city council meetings is because they control our water supply. We went to our city council meetings, and they were like, well, we can't do anything about it. Literally. We can't do anything about it. They just threw their hands up in like total helplessness, and I mean, a lot of them freaked out and said, "Oh my God, it's horrible that that this could be going on." But blah 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 blah. They didn't do anything about it. They don't want to. There's nothing we can do. They kind of like passed the buck. So we had to go to the city of North Miami Beach. And we went to the city of North Miami Beach repeatedly. They've gotten emails from people all over the world, all over the country, and they still don't want to. They don't want to pay attention. And right now it's election season, so the elections for them are coming up in like 2 weeks. And this guy is corrupt. He really, really is. I mean, there's actually a guy running for mayor, George Vallejo, or Vallejo, if I'm saying his last name correctly. He's really a nice guy. And he was inspired by, like the Campaign for Liberty and Ron Paul. And, he understands, like I've had conversations with him one-on-one, and he understands all about, I mean, this guy's wide awake. He understands about the New World Order. He understands what's going on. He knows that there's, he knows all about the fact that there's drugs being funneled into this country by our own government. He's right on top of all this. And, it's key to get someone like him who's awake, who understands what's going on, into a position at home in your local government, because that's our first line of defense. And, the campaign mudslinging that the current mayor takes part in. He's just horrible. I mean, this guy's six. If you call him out on something, he six code enforcement. He six code enforcement on Stephanie, this blogger, and she had to remove a walk from the front of her house. I mean, ridiculous. So we're going to break, guys. When we get back, I'm going to get into a few other things. I just wanted to let you know, give you an appraisal as to what was going on. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Doesn't exist anymore. This is the point of no return, nigga. You better believe this. Mary Magdalene giving birth to the children of Jesus. The evolution of the world, bloody and dramatic. Human beings killing monkeys to conquer the planet. The kingdoms of Africa and Mesopotamia. Machine gunning your body with the...
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host Popeye from FederalJack.com. Getting back into what I was talking about. Pretty much, I that's my own, theory is that they were sent, they were just called, and these guys came out just to check because they weren't wearing guns. They didn't look like they didn't look like field agent types. I mean, obviously they go out and do field in the field, as they say, and they do interviews, but they didn't have guns or anything, and they weren't willing to give me a business card. So that was the strange thing, is that they wouldn't give me a card. Again, I called, and I did leave a phone number and a message saying, hey, look, I'd like to know if these guys are real agents or if they were people pretending to be agents. Again, we have a huge home invasion type robbery problem down here in Florida. They happen all the time, and even the lady on the phone that I spoke to at the FBI agreed that we have that large home invasion problem here. And I said, well, it's kind of freaky that you can't, there's no way I can find out whether or not these guys are real FBI agents. The fact that they didn't take it seriously, like that somebody might be pretending to be an FBI agent, says to me that they were real. But the fact that they didn't bother to call me back with any names of agents or anything, and again, I should have – it's partially my fault because I should have paid attention more and memorized the names. I was literally caught with my pants down. I was asleep when I answered the door, so I didn't expect it. And they do that on purpose. They try to catch you off guard. I tried to do my best under the circumstances, but I do regret not pushing further to get their names. I mean, like I said, I did ask twice for a card, and both times it was kind of, oh, don't worry, if you have to call something in or whatever, just call the main hotline number. And then I even remember him saying, he made the comment of before you call the main hotline number, because you know how slow government works, you should call 911 first. That way, if it's that way that you can at least maybe stop it, the police can stop it or whatever. And that was the tone of the conversation. It wasn't, they asked me if I'd ever been contacted by anybody through the website, I guess. But they didn't even say through the website. They just asked if I'd been contacted. And I brought up the website, and I said, no, the only thing I get on our website is trolls, which is the truth. And, I was trying to distance because I knew I kind of had a feeling that they were probing, and I was trying to distance myself from any idea in their head that they think I might be affiliated with some radical group. And again, I wish I had been a little more awake and said, well, what would make you think that I would even know any? But I guess in the back of my mind, I already kind of half expected this, because of the stuff that I talk about on the radio shows, and because of my website, because of my YouTube videos. I guess I kind of half expected it, but I've kept stuff so I've tried to keep it away from my personal life. That way the two didn't intermingle, as to, just to protect my wife, kind of like a layer. And now these guys know, who I am, and it's a little unnerving. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. I do, again, if there's anybody that knows any good constitutional attorneys or anything, let me know, because I would like to at least look into it and find out why, why they came and knocking on my door, since they weren't so forthcoming with the reason. And it will be in their reports and stuff. And I could file a Freedom of Information Act request on myself with them, which I very well may do. But I'd rather speak to somebody that knows the law to see what kind of avenues I have, or what I should do, what I shouldn't do, just so I have, just in case they are and I don't really think they are trying to set me up, but just in case they are, it's better to have all your bases covered. That way I've spoken to someone legally about this, and I've looked into it, and I can cover my bases. I mean, if they want to try to frame me for something, they'll just try to frame me, but they would really, they're barking up the wrong tree with that angle. Anyway, it's more creepy. I don't think that it's just more creepy that they even came here to my, where I live. I don't go to their place. I don't go to, do because of whatever their political beliefs are or what they talk about. I don't come and show up at their house and ask them questions. So it's just a little creepy. And again, it's not the agent himself waking up that morning saying, I'm going to go to Popeye's house and check him out, blah, blah. He's obviously told by a higher up or whatever. It's just creepy. Okay. It's creepy to know that I'm on their radar, and that I must have touched a nerve with something that I talk about must be true, I guess, huh? I guess I'm not that much of a conspiracy theorist if I have people coming and knocking on my door from the federal government. So I must be striking a nerve with somebody. So if it's not the mayor of North Miami Beach that we struck a nerve with, which I already know we did, but if it's not him, then it's got to be somebody higher up that I pissed off with something I said. So whatever I say, guys, I must be doing something right. So you should pay a little more attention to me. That being said, I think I've talked this to death. Between this show, JJ's show, and being on Alex Jones's show on Friday. I've talked the whole FBI visit to death, so I'd like to get onto a few other things. And we got a few minutes before we go to break. I'm going to give you guys a list of books. I know I've given you some of these books before, but it's kind of a revised book list of things that you guys should read. So one of them I know I already gave to you guys before, so I'm not even going to bother repeating it. But I'm gonna give you guys a bunch of books to go pick up. Try to find them in ebook format or audiobook, whatever's easier for you. Check out American Conspiracies by Jesse Ventura. Obviously it was co-written with another guy, I forget his name, but it's a good starter book. It's a good book to start off with, to expose you to a few things that you might not have been exposed to, and then you can use it as a stepping stone to do more research from there. From there, you have Target Patton by Robert K. Wilcox. A great book. You want to learn about the truth, what happened to General Patton. I suggest you read that book, and it fits with everything today, because if he hadn't been killed, things might be different today. Debunking 9/11 Debunking by David Ray Griffin. That's the essential book to crap all over anybody that tries to tell you that 9/11 wasn't an inside job, and that it was just 19 guys in a cave. And then when they start quoting Popular Mechanics, once you've read that book and digested that information, you'll be able to eat those people for breakfast. The Biggest Secret by David Icke. Very good read, one of my favorite books. I suggest you guys read it, whether or not you believe everything he says in the book, because he gets into the interdimensional reptilian thing in there. That's besides the point. The other information he gives that you'll get from this book, and he sources everything. In fact, a couple of the sources, some of the things that he sourced in his book, I ended up going and getting these older books that he sourced, that he researched from, and they're real. These guys were the Alex Joneses or David Icke's or David Ray Griffins of back in the day. So good book, good book to read, full of good resources. Another good book, The Attack on the Liberty by James Scott. It's written by, I believe it was his father was on the Liberty, and he wrote it from the stories his father told about. But great book. Another one, two good books actually, both of them by L. Fletcher Prouty, Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, The Secret Team and JFK. Those are two different books. So one's called The Secret Team, and the other one's called JFK. I recommend you get both books. I have both, read them both. Very informative books. Cognitive Infiltration by David Ray Griffin. Another great book. You'll learn about Cass Sunstein and how he wants to infiltrate the 9/11 Truth movement and destroy it from within. American Assassination: The Death of Senator Paul Wellstone by Jim Fetzer. Check it out. And Me and Lee by Judith Vary Baker. All right, guys, we're going to break. Check out the books on Amazon while we're gone, and when we come back, I'll get into a few things, including the Titanic.
People are always asking me, yo, Gemini, what's your angle? Are you a devil or an angel? And I say both, as I continue to blame the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers, the real reason New York lost their towers. Don't sit back or hesitate to react to the impact. Many taking a nap. In fact, they would fake an attack to make way.
Welcome back. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Okay. Before the break, I was getting into some different things, and I told you I was going to get into the Titanic. Well, I'll just jump right into it. The Titanic itself, okay, everybody knows the story. The ship, went into an ice field, an iceberg field. It was they hit an iceberg, punctured holes all along the one side. A lot of the damage was above the where the bulkheads were built to withstand damage to, and it took a lot of water on. Yada yada yada. The ship sunk. What a lot of people don't know is that there is a theory, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, that the ship was sunk on purpose. And the reason it was sunk was because there were three very important passengers that they wanted to kill, and they needed to make it look like an accident and that there was no way connection to them. And that's because three of these billionaires at the time were against the formation of the Federal Reserve Bank. And then when you go and you do your research, you find out that the White Star Line, which was the ocean liner company that owned the Titanic and her two sister ships, the Lusitania, which was also sent into German-held waters and purposely allowed to be sunk, getting us into World War I. The White Star Line was owned by J.P. Morgan, and he was actually supposed to be on her maiden voyage and canceled at the last minute due to unknown reasons. And all these luminaries, these rich people that were in their way, these elites that weren't for the formation of the Federal Reserve, that they were standing in the way of it, they needed to get to their fortunes. They needed them out of the way, and they wanted their vast fortunes and everything else. And they wanted to knock their control away from them. And I actually have an article on FederalJack.com titled, "Was the Sinking of the Titanic Done on Purpose?" And the research was actually done by somebody else. And like I said, I use FederalJack.com as an archive of everything. The original link is there, so you can go back and check the original sources. But the source that I sourced this particular version of the story from is not the actual first place that I heard it and that I researched it. You can actually look it up. Just type in, if you can Google while we still have a free internet, or go on Bing or whatever, or Scroogle, which is the one that supposedly blocks Google from tracking you. Look up, just Google Jesuits sunk the Titanic, and it's because the organization of the Jesuits was involved in the sinking of the Titanic. Anybody who's ever researched the Jesuits, I don't mean your regular down the street Jesuit priest people. Again, that's like saying your regular porch mason is the ones that do all the satanic rituals and stuff. And no, they don't know. They keep a buffer. But there are people that you'd think are nice, gentle little priests and stuff, and they're not. They're completely evil. Long story short, the Jesuits have had their hands involved in many things. Bill Clinton is Jesuit trained. So looking through the article, skipping over it, you'll notice that the three people that were against the organization of it were they weren't just three nobodies. Okay, they weren't like no names. The three of them were Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor. Now, these are, again, a lot of these families. They have bloodlines that go back and can be traced back to nobility and stuff. But again, the New World Order, it's never really about people as a whole. It's always about the agenda. And if the agenda, if you get in the way of the agenda, you're expendable. Even if you're one of these elites, they don't care. The ends justifies the means. And they wanted to kill these three men in particular because they were blocking the formation of the Federal Reserve Bank, which took place about a year and a half, 2 years later, after the Titanic was sunk. And they had met years before, and these three wealthy men who would have been billionaires by today's standards, they were pretty much cock blocking the formation of the Federal Reserve. And the Jesuits decided that they had to go. And these guys, just like with 9/11 and everything else, things are not planned ass backwards. So you go look up, who built the White Star Line. Or excuse me, the White Star Line owned it, but everybody that was involved in building it was J.P. Morgan funded. So they created the boat. So all of these engineering mistakes that they say led to the Titanic's demise. Okay, even though it came out of the top shipyards of the time, there was technical details that led to the ship's demise, like the bulkheads not going up high enough and stuff like that. It's just there's small stuff that the right person in the know doing can cause problems doing it. They only had one pair of big eyes, as we used to call them when I was in the Coast Guard, which are the binoculars you use to see 9-10 miles out. They only had one pair because I think it was the cabinet, if I recall correctly, the cabinet that they were locked up in had a key to unlock it, and the only key that they that they had, the crew members were changed out. The crew members that got on it when it first left its port the first time, they made a couple port calls before they sailed out, and they changed the crew around at the last minute. And one of the higher ups in the Jesuit order actually paid a visit to the ship on its last port call. Sat with Captain Smith, who was a Jesuit. And you don't have to be religious to be a Jesuit or to work for them. You can just be you could just be a little stooge, just like the New World Order. And Smith was one of their stooges. He served the Jesuit order under the guise of a ship captain. That was his, he did it. That was his everyday job, and that's how he served them. And he literally ran the ship into the ice field. He was given repeated warnings. Hey, there's ice ahead. He having the right people, block your access to the binoculars. Some people say, he was drunk, and they try to say, that stuff. I don't really think he was drunk. If he was drinking, he was probably drinking because he knew he was going to die. But he really, from what I've researched on it, if it's true, and the research I've done on it, it's not something that is far out there. It's actually a very plausible theory. Knowing what these guys do, again, I don't have 100% proof that the Titanic was sunk, but from on purpose, I should say, it was sunk. I don't have proof that it was sunk on purpose, but from doing the research into the theory of it being sunk on purpose, it's very creepy when you come across things. J.P. Morgan owned the White Star Line. He had the ship built. They purposely invited all these three guys onto the ship for the ship's maiden voyage, and then at the last minute, J.P. Morgan backs out. You find them doing the same things. Right before the Gulf oil spill, they started selling stocks and stuff. Right before 9/11, they were doing insider trading. There was put options put on airlines in the weeks leading up to 9/11, betting that on that day the United and American Airlines stocks would plummet. That's how you make money off a put option. Now, how the hell would somebody 2 weeks beforehand know that the stock in United and American Airlines is going to plummet? The people that investigated it outright said that it reeked of prior knowledge. How come there's never been an investigation into it? Well, a lot of the paperwork and computers that were connected to that were inside Building 7, and at 5:30 in the afternoon, Building 7 dropped into its own footprint conveniently, even though it wasn't hit by an airplane. So the scope of the operations that these people can pull off is amazing. So again, I don't have I haven't nailed it down 100, for 100% sure that they took the Titanic out, but from the information I've done and information I've come across under doing the research I've done, it does point a finger that they could have done it. And it's not some crazy theory. It's actually something that's very, very plausible, and actually more plausible than a captain with, over 26 years of knowledge, especially of the area he was, patrolling through, I'll say, that he would have known where that ice field was. He would have known the dangers. It just doesn't make sense that he would do the things that he did in his last hours and last minutes. The stuff that happened, just the thing that they switched the crew out, it's very plausible that they purposely did sink that ship to kill those 3 guys. I mean, if they were blocking the formation of the Federal Reserve, and look how much of a money monster that thing is, and all the evil it spawned. Can you imagine what would have happened if those 3 were were possibly able to stop the formation of the Federal Reserve? Again, the Jesuit order is just another group of in all these secret societies, and they have their own religious beliefs, but at the heart of it, they're just evil, Luciferian, secret society morons. Just like, and again, I don't mean your Jesuit priest down the street. Just like not all Masons are bad, not all Jesuits are bad, not all everybody is bad, but there is a bad cancerous element in it. All right, guys, we're going to break. We'll be back in about 6 minutes. We're going to go pay some bills. Stick around. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye from Federal Jack.
I was only 5 and I was the only surviving witness. My entire village burned to the ground. He wore a serpent in his crown. Happily committed murder with a frown. And an army of black hooded fiery skull generals and a sorcerer with a now. Then forever I burn. This is the point from which I can never retreat. Cause if I turn back now, there can never be peace. This is the point from which I will die, succeed, live in the struggle. I know I'm alive when I bleed. From now on, it can never be the same as before, cause the place that I'm from doesn't exist anymore. This is the point of no return, nigga. You better believe this.
Welcome back. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Please check out my site. Go check it out. I urge you, while the internet is still free and available, go check it out. Copy anything you want. If you have your own website and you want to put up you want to put up the articles, you don't even have to reference that you got it from me. You can reference it from the original source that I got it from. I don't care. Just spread the information, please. It's very imperative that the information gets out. Educating people about real history and real things is important. MTV and Britney Spears and Lady Gaga and all that. It's all, first of all, that's purposely put out there to confuse you, but that's what all that is confusion and BS. It's crap. It's mind control. When you look into the people that they put out, Gaga and Britney Spears and all them, they're all Project Monarch mind control slaves. And there are people out there that'll say mind control doesn't exist. Now, the people that say that are either ignorant or they're government fed, paid troll of some sort, and they're trying to purposely give you disinformation, because mind control certainly does exist. The government, even congressional record, admits that mind control exists. They admitted that they did mind control experiments, under the guise of MK Ultra. Most of the documents, we'll never know what really, without actually being able to talk to people that were involved, we'll never know fully what happened, because I don't believe it was William Casey. It might have been. but maybe it was William Casey, but the CIA director at the time when they were being questioned, might have been Casey, shredded all the documents and, literally burned files and tapes and stuff that pertain to MK Ultra and that type of stuff. So we'll never really know the extent that they went to, but I can guarantee you that they didn't stop. Something that was working that well, they're not going to stop. I can almost guarantee you that. Sorry if you guys hear any grunting in the background. That's my puppy. She's riding shotgun on my lap today. So if you hear any grunting in the background, that's her. Say hello, monster. And now she doesn't want to grunt. Now she's being all shy. Anyway, these people, when it comes back to the Titanic, these people will stop at nothing. So, and they have, when you control money and when you have that much money and that much control of the monetary system on the line, don't think that these guys wouldn't do something like go to the extent of building a ship just to sink the friggin' thing. I mean, they sent the Lusitania out knowing it was filled with weapons, I may add. It had munitions in it. Even though they said they didn't, it did. Okay? It had munitions in it, which clearly that's a violation of, that puts the ship as once there's munitions aboard, and now you put – basically they were using the people on board like human shields. And they knew that if they attacked the ship and sunk the ship, that they would have the prerequisite that they needed to go into World War I. In fact, it was even brought up at the time that they should maybe sink a ship, and that might actually, almost like an Operation Northwoods proposal at the time. And they were really serious about it, and then the Lusitania got sunk. And Germany, I'm not saying I'm not taking sides, but I'm just giving you the facts so you can make up your mind for yourself. Germany put an ad in the newspaper and said, do not board the Lusitania. It's got munitions on it, and if you board the Lusitania when it comes into German-controlled waters, we are going to consider it, that it's an act of war. We're going to consider the ship a target. We're going to sink it. And we're going to consider it an act of aggression. And only one newspaper actually printed the ad before the Lusitania went, but all the other newspapers that were on the East Coast didn't print. The rest of them didn't print and you can go look this up. They didn't print the article. I think it was like 8 or 12 hours after the Lusitania sailed. So they waited to print this warning from the Germans until after it had been boarded and taken off. And now they print it. Oh, we accidentally printed it too late. We simultaneously had the same printing problem. Okay, no. When you understand that these same elite families control the media, and at the time the only thing they had to contend with were the newspapers. So how easy? Just get them to print the paper late, or the ad late in the paper rather, and bam, there you go. I mean, how simple. And people, there would have had to have been a vast conspiracy. Not when you own the newspaper company. If you're J.P. Morgan and you say, I own you and I'm telling you not to do this, you only got to speak to the head guy at the newspaper, the head editor. That's all you got to talk to. There doesn't have to be some vast conspiracy. Michael Springman said when he worked in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, the office he worked for, his higher-ups made him issue passports to people that should not have gotten passports, and they should have been flagged, including some of the 9/11 hijackers. So, and he called it the Passport for Terrorists program over there. So you have a guy that worked, former State Department employee, telling you that, hey, I would say no, but my higher-ups would say yes. If you go read the book The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty, one of the books I told you to check out, the book, he tells you, he explains how the secret team, which is what he called them in from the CIA, works. And basically what they do is, and that doesn't mean everybody at the CIA is bad. The guy that cleans the floors in the building in Langley, and the plumbers and stuff, and the people that run the front desk, they have virtually no idea what's going on. They think they're serving their country in a good manner, and you don't hold them accountable. It's the people at the top that are to be blamed, and it's usually only one or two people, and it's compartmentalized. And these higher ups, again, they'll get CIA people that are willing to work for them, and then what they do is they put them into positions of power. I mean, even Jesse Ventura talked about how when he was a governor, one of the first things that happened to him was the CIA sat down with him, and they told him, we're CIA, blah, 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 blah. And, we have people, there, and he didn't call out who the guy was, but he did say that there was a person in his regular government that he dealt with every day that was a CIA agent. And it was brought to his attention that the guy was CIA and that they were keeping tabs on him. And it's done with every governor and every state, and it's done from state level all the way down into even local governments have CIA implants in a lot of, not every single local municipality, but major municipalities. Their local governments have CIA agents embedded in it. And this was all admitted, and Ventura admitted this on tape years ago. And he talked about this years ago and said, hey, they really these guys are really doing it. They're serious. These guys, the CIA is doing some creepy stuff. And when you understand that you don't need everybody in the office to be bad, you just need the guy at the top to be bad. So everybody in the office could have the best of intentions, but if the head honcho, the guy who okays everything, says no, well then it's no. Look at case in point. I forget what state it is. One of the states out in the Midwest, they passed. The voters voted that they wanted medical marijuana. Well, the federal government called up the governor the day she was supposed to sign the law into make it a bill, because the House and the Senate of the state had said yeah, and they said, the federal government called her up and told her, if you sign that bill into law, you're going to bring we're going to come down. You're going to bring they first of all they pretty much, I'm sure they threatened her. But she came out and said that they told her, it's come out. I don't know if it was her that released it, to be honest with you, but it's come out that they told her that there would be a huge influx of grow houses all over the state, and there'd be a massive drug problem. And then they told her as a caveat that the state could face, or her and the state could face charges from the federal government, dealing with drugs and stuff, and for violating federal laws and stuff. So they used intimidation. They called her up and they threatened her. Basically, it was a threat. It was saying, hey, look, just so you know, we wouldn't want to have to prosecute you guys for violating federal laws. That's a threat. Whether or not you think it's that is different, and that's different than the attitude that the people that came to my door had. That's why I said it was very disarming the way that they weren't like that. But even if they were cordial and they had said that line, that's a threatening tone. So the governor was told by the federal government that if she, basically, if she signed this Medical Marijuana Act into law, that they would come after her. Without a shadow of a doubt, they would come after her. They would come after people in the state. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, all right, guys, we're going to break. When we get back, I'll tell you what state it was in. I'm going to look it up right now and find out what state it was in. So we're going to go pay some bills. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole, and I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. Welcome back, guys. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com. Before the break, I was telling you about a state that the governor was threatened by the feds not to sign the bill into law, and so she didn't sign it into law. It's Washington State. So all you people, anybody who listens to this broadcast on a replay or YouTube or whatever, anybody in Washington State, you should be pissed off at your governor for caving into pressure from the federal government. When it's the states that, the federal government doesn't tell the states how to run their states. That's not the way the Constitution is set up. That's not the way the system is set up. They tell you and want you to believe that's the way it's set up, but that's not the way it works. So some other wacky news for today. Tokyo Disneyland reopens. So they've enlarged the evacuation zone outside of Fukushima. They admit that it's total meltdown. They're going to encase the one. I know of at least one reactor that's being. They're casing one of the reactors in concrete. Okay, so that shows meltdown. Okay, and yet right downwind of it, not too far away, Tokyo Disneyland, and they're reopening, and there's morons that waited online overnight to get in, and the people that they like, the newscaster and everybody, I mean, they don't even mention the radiation. They act like everything's okay. Hey, don't worry that you're all going to get testicular cancer in a few years. Don't worry that you're going to, you're breathing in crap testicular cancer. Not even that. I mean, they're going to have lung cancer. You breathe in a single little tiny piece of uranium and you're done. You die of lung cancer, a horrible, painful, crappy death. And these people are just going, oh, we're going to go back to Disneyland. Everything's okay. I wouldn't go anywhere near that. That entire park's probably irradiated. And not probably, it is. If it's downrange of it and it's got radiation. And these people are not worried. They think everything's okay. Because the government says it's all okay. So literally, they opened up Disneyland. And how evil is it of Disney that they agreed to open it? So that just goes to show you how evil Disney really is. And I don't want to hear, oh, it's just because they're a big corporation. No, Disney's really part of the New World Order. You should go research Walt Disney. He worked with the FBI to instill mind control programming. And through the FBI, he ended up working with the CIA on MKUltra and Project Monarch. You should really research Project Monarch. You'll learn a lot about Britney Spears and the rest of them. You'll understand where they all come from. The best book, again, I could tell you all to get is we have it for free, ebook download on the site. But if you want to buy it, like the physical copy like I have, you can get it on Amazon. It's The Transformation of America by Kathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips. And you will learn some stuff that'll blow your mind. Kathy O'Brien was a former MKUltra Project Monarch mind control slave. So you're getting it right from right from her mouth. And when you research her and you research these other people that have come out, all their stories are the same. Even if they are, they're not corroborating, they've come out on their own, and then, once they've been out, they find each other. But all these people, there's many different people that have come out. There's another woman, I forget her name, but the name of the book is called Thanks for the Memories. And again, it delves into the mind control that she was put into. That's where I learned a lot about where I was telling Preston on when we were covering Against the Wall, JJ show a couple hours ago. I said on air that the country music industry is used to ferret drugs and the mind control slaves. Well, I didn't make that up. I found that out from my investigations, especially reading Kathy O'Brien stuff. In fact, hold on, guys. I'm getting a call from JJ right now. Hey, call me on air because I'm on air. So call me. Call the show. Bye. I had to take that really quick. Sorry about that, guys. JJ probably wanted to let the listeners know he was out of range, so he couldn't make a call or get on the computer before because he's driving back from California, so he wasn't able to get into range where he could actually host a show again this week. So he wanted me to he just sent me a message and says he wanted me to apologize for him not being on, but any of his listeners that are listening, he will be back on normal time next week. So pay attention for JJ show, and I'll probably be on him with it next week too, like I always am, from 3 to 5. Some other crazy news while I'm on the crazy news category here. Hundreds of U.S. sailors being investigated for using the drug spice, which is that synthetic marijuana. But they're not being investigated for using it now. They're being retroactively investigated. The DEA just made, under emergency, panic, they made it illegal. The drug spice, maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe a month at the most. Well, these sailors are being investigated for using this stuff 6-7 months ago when it was legal, when you could go to the regular cigarette store or whatever convenience store and buy it right at the counter. You used to be able to get it at 7-Eleven and bodegas, and you could buy it right from them. It wasn't illegal. It was right next to the cigarettes, So while it was legal and they were charging you taxes on it, that's okay. But as soon as they decide that it's illegal, then now they're going to retroactively go back, and it's a couple hundred sailors in the Navy, and they're retroactively going back, and they're probably going to the news person, the interviewer, the little repeater, was talking to the family member, and she asked, they were like, well, what do you think's going to happen? And then the family member was like, well, we think that more than likely that they're going to get kicked out, and they'll lose their any military benefits, which means you get kicked out. That's like under drugs and stuff. That's usually, if you get a good jag, you might get you'll probably get dishonorable discharge. If not, you'll get discharged under other than honorable conditions, which is just as bad as having a dishonorable discharge. It's hard to find work when you have a dishonorable discharge from the military. Good luck if you have down here in the state of Florida, if you wanted to apply for a concealed weapons permit, that's one of the discouraging factors, is if you've had a dishonorable discharge, why were you dishonorably discharged? And if it was usually it's for drug use or stuff like that, they won't give it to you. So you're done. You're marked. I mean, anything, that kind of thing can screw your life up forever. If you're disabled vet and you rely on your benefits, you can't apply for them if you're dishonorably discharged. So if I was dishonorably discharged from the military, if I didn't serve, if they considered that I didn't serve with honor, and I was literally, I had full honorable discharge. But if I was dishonorably discharged from the military, I wouldn't be able to have access to the VA medical benefits that I have access to. I wouldn't be able to even get my GI stuff, the GI Bill stuff, and you pay into that monthly. A portion of your paycheck monthly goes into that. So say you've been paying into that for 2 or 3 years, and now you're being prosecuted because some overzealous schmuck prosecutor decides they're going to make an example out of somebody, because that's what it sounds like they're doing. Okay, that's what happens. And these guys are being prosecuted over and investigated over the use of spice because retroactively. So, and obviously it's being done through the Navy, but that's because there's some overzealous little jerk, officer in the Navy that's trying to make a name for himself, and he's going to show you this is what happens when sailors use drugs. Well, the problem is they're going after the guys for using it retroactively. They're not going after them for using it within the past few weeks since it's been made illegal. They haven't touched it since it was made illegal. They're going after him for when they were using it when it was legal. So if they can go after the sailors, they can go after anybody. If they can go after service members, they can go after anybody. They start making crimes retroactive. We're going to break. We'll be right back.
And I say both, as I continue to blame the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers, the real reason New York lost their towers. Don't sit back or hesitate to react to the impact. Many taking a nap. In fact, they would fake an attack to make way for the Patriots.
Welcome back. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. And I have a special treat for everybody today. Somebody called in, and we were able to patch him through because we've been having problems with our lines, but I was able to connect with him after about 6 attempts during the break. And JJ, say hello.
Hey, guys. Popeye, thanks for doing my show today. Obviously, I was not around, and
yeah, I told everybody how you were stuck on the road and that you had a problem. I keep getting phone calls. Everybody keeps calling me while I'm on the radio, and I keep forgetting to turn my phone off. So sorry, guys.
Anyways,
go on.
I'm sure the show was great. Popeye does a great job. Thank you, Popeye. I called you on your regular phone. I wasn't even thinking that you were on the air. So.
No, that's why I picked up. It was funny. I picked up and I said I actually muted my microphone for a second because I was trying to turn the ringer off, and I said to you on air, that's when I hung up on you and I said, call me on the show. And then, like an idiot, I didn't even go to the board to see if you were calling in.
I did. I called and you didn't.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that you called, and then that's when I called you during the break and told you to call back.
What was my show about today? Did I have a good one?
Oh yeah, Preston wrote
Awesome.
with me, so
I knew it would.
yeah, we did a great show. We talked we talked all about it. I explained what happened. I just told you during the break that I had a visit from the feds, and then we went into John and I were pretty much trying to explain to people, like, you know, that when you know how you talk to a police officer or, you know, or a fed, you shouldn't, you know, don't lie to them, don't give them too much, you know, you shouldn't give out tons of information.
Don't say nothing.
Yeah, they don't exactly. They don't need to know anything. If they ask you
Name, rank, and serial number.
pretty much, yeah. You know, and if they
I don't tell them anything.
If they start interrogating you, like, oh, do you have guns in your house and stuff like that? That's when you should like hoist the flag and say,
You use your right to remain silent, right there.
Yeah. Well, because asking you a question like that is that's as personal of a question as asking you what religion you are.
Well, the thing of it is anything you say is evidence. They'll use that. They can use that against you. So they just throw out any old question.
Of course, and they're just. We talked about how
and a lot of people answer.
Yeah, and
they're scared.
We talked about how, you know, like the stuff that I told them. Obviously, I figured that if they had taken enough initiative to come to my house, and because you couldn't have found out where I lived from my website, so I think it's the mayor of North Miami Beach. Personally, I think that's my own personal assumption on it, only because of just the facts of how, like, the stuff that they brought up, the questions that they asked and stuff.
Well, you know what, Popeye? Let them bring it, because we don't do anything we're ashamed of. We don't say anything we wouldn't say in front of a cop or a court or.
Well, that's why, you know, the questions I answered. The questions I was willing to answer were stuff that I already figured they knew about me, so there was no point in me. But they weren't the guys that I dealt with. They were actually. It was very disarming in how unthreatening they were in their manner towards me. I was, you know, like when you expect to deal with the feds, you expect to be grilled and stuff. These guys weren't wearing dark sunglasses. They were very friendly. It was very, like, it's almost like they're teaching them how to be disarming with not being a putz when they come and they ask you stuff. But they really didn't get into too much personal stuff with me. They just they were feeling me out. That's why I really think that, and they didn't focus too much on my website and stuff. They just asked me if I'd ever been contacted by, like, homegrown terrorists or whatever, because of my website, and because because my stance on fluoride in the water and stuff. And of course I answered no, because no, I've never been contacted. You know, none of your.
I wouldn't talk to them if they did. If somebody called up and said, "Hi, I'm Al Qaeda,"
I'd be like, go F yourself, and I'd hang the phone up. You know what I mean? First of all, if I believed, even if I know Al Qaeda's government run, so of course I wouldn't deal with them. But even if I believed the official storyline that they were bad guys, why the hell would I want anything to do with them? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So we're Americans. See, that's the one thing that people don't seem to realize when they think that we're not American. Are you kidding? We're more American than anybody that just sits there and accepts everything that they're shoved down their throat, you know, hook, line, and sinker.
What they're doing with TSA, dude. They molested that little 6-year-old girl. I don't know if you saw the video because you've been on the road.
Yes, I actually did. I've been on the road. I haven't seen anything. I've had like 5 minutes of Wi-Fi in the last week, so. But that I did catch. It's
crazy. And, you know, Fox News the other night, they had this jerk-off comedian, now I can't, Paul Mercurio, I think his name is, and he's from Comedy Central, and they had him and Sean Hannity, of course, doing his neuro-linguistic programming with repetitive words and his hand gestures, and then some bimbo that works at Fox News was on there, and the three of them were like, there was a fourth guy. He wasn't so police state-ish, and but he said it was overkill with the 6-year-old girl. But
they're just dying for the police state, because that means more people that more weak people can have more power over powerful people.
That's what
it's all about.
I don't see anything wrong with it, dude. This guy literally said on air, adjustments have to be made for a new world order. He said things. Yeah. The one guy goes to him. She's 6 years old. She's not a terrorist. He turns around and he said right on TV, "How do I know that?" The terrorists nowadays, they be any shape and size. So that's mind control. That's programming. That's them trying to instill the idea that
if we rape a little girl in public, it's good.
It's okay
to own good.
Hand rape and physically.
Oh, she was asking for it, Popeye.
Of course, because she could be Al Qaeda. that
could have been Al Qaeda.
That God forbid that little 6-year-old girl actually want to travel somewhere with her family. She's a terrorist, even though she was born after 9/11 happened. But that's Al Qaeda's new MO now. Is they get they're getting children to do.
Yeah, I know, and plus now we got bus drivers looking. I mean, now the kids that ride the bus to school are possible Al Qaedas now.
They drug testing her.
We're all Al Qaeda.
They said they were drug testing her, and TSA says, "Oh, well, maybe the drug test they were talking about was reference to them testing for chemicals on their hands." And I'm like, well, no, they said specifically in the video they were drug testing the girl. So maybe they did wipe her down for residue for explosives. But why the hell would you wipe down a 6-year-old girl's hands for explosives? Oh, because the terrorists would use her. Really? What? How many bombings have we had that actually took place? How many real bombings have we had?
How many real bombings have we had that didn't come from a Predator drone?
None.
Not many.
None of these bombs. Look, and by the way, I don't know if you know, but 2 of our soldiers were killed. A Marine and a Navy corpsman were killed in Afghanistan by a Predator drone.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they thought they were insurgents, so they hit them with a Hellfire missile.
They had it coming, right?
No,
they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
We regret it, but that's what happens during the war on
terror.
terror.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you got a kid in the in a air-conditioned trailer somewhere here in the United States.
Arizona or Nevada.
People just think it's great. They're just going to refund. They're pouring lots of money into these drone programs.
Well, now they're flying them over the United States as well.
Yeah, they're flying them all over New York.
Yeah, and people think that that's not true. Oh, they are. They're patrolling our borders with Canada and the southern border of the United States, not just with Mexico, but over the Caribbean with unmanned aerial vehicles. And the Border Patrol says they patrol over the Caribbean with them and over Florida and stuff because of all the illegal migrants that come in. Well, then what's the Coast Guard for? We have a ton of Coast Guard stations and bases all over Florida and cutters and small boat stations and small boat crews that specifically do that job.
I think they use those to get rid of the competition, right?
Well, see, they just use it as an excuse. They're using the whole we need them to check for illegal aliens and stuff and drug running and stuff. They're using that as an excuse because that's what the Coast Guard does. The Coast Guard does air patrols. They do air patrols. They have C-130 Hercules. They have helicopters. They have small Learjets that they use. Plus they do what they call surface patrols, which is when they're actually on the surface of the water. So they have air and surface covered, and yet the Border Patrol claims that they need to have unmanned aerial vehicles in the sky. The very same unmanned aerial vehicles that can hover around for 72 hours. You can load missiles on them. And just because
that should be a prime example of the mistakes that can be made.
Well, just because they're not currently doing it doesn't mean we have the ability to put missiles on it, but we're not. Well, okay, but that doesn't mean that you won't in the future.
Right.
That's what's scary.
It doesn't matter. Listen, if you're not doing anything wrong, nobody's got any reason to be looking at you, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't be getting investigated. You shouldn't be getting your balls busted and having, but that's the thing. Everybody could be a terrorist now. So now, and that they're indoctrinating everybody that everybody could be a terrorist. So that's why. That's what the whole feeling up at the TSA at the airport's for. It's indoctrination. All right, we're going to break. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com, and I got JJ Inc. riding shotgun with me. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the final segment of Against the Wall. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-host, JJ Inc. JJ, say hello.
Hi, guys. I'm glad I got the call. It's been a rough week, and it's been great. I had a great time. Been with my daughter the whole time. It's been worth it. I've learned a lot of things over this last week about people around the country because I just did a tour. I just did a tour of the country, and you know what? There's a lot more people out there that are beginning to realize that. Well, I'm not going to go way down the rabbit hole, but there's a lot of people out there that know that there's something wrong now, and they know it's not us. See, we've been told all this time that we're the problem, that that it's your neighbors and their friends, and that's what's wrong. But it's not, and people are starting to realize our government does not represent us, and we're not being represented, and the voice that they're speaking, with our face on it, is false. And there's people who are starting to get angry about it, and I'm encouraged, and yet, as the same token, I'm a little freaked out about it because it's falling right. It's exactly, this is the problem, reaction, solution. They've already got their solution. They're creating the problem. The people are falling right into it. So, but the good news is it's not as hard to, it's not as hard to tell somebody what's really going on anymore because it doesn't seem as far-fetched now.
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you something else that's creepy. The reason I think I almost kind of half expected a visit from the FBI was about 2 weeks ago, and I won't say her name, but a listener and someone that is, they use Federal Jack. They go on there. She checks it out every day. She made a donation to my website, and I think it was like $20 she donated to me or something like that. And within like 48 hours of her making a donation, the FBI visited her. And she's not in the same state I am. She's in a complete different state. And I won't mention the state because I don't want to be able to narrow it down for any spook or Fed that's listening, so they know who I'm talking about. But she had mentioned to me a couple weeks ago. She said, it was really creepy. The Feds came and questioned me, and mentioned your website and that I had been on your website and stuff, and they mentioned a donation. And she only really, she checks everything out, but she uses the health section. She likes our health section that we have.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there at federaljack.com, and a lot of documents posted.
Well, she contacted me and said, they came and saw me, and so I think that's kind of why I was a little, even though I was caught off guard, why I wasn't, I was kind of, I don't know how to describe it, I was kind of half expecting it almost. I should have been a little more, I should have used that and been a little more on the ball. But that's the only thing that makes me wonder if it was them watching me for a longer period of time because of the website. Was because
your website gets a lot of hits, man. There's a lot of good information on there.
Because the stuff I
it's not a lot of crazy stuff. You can go there and you find stuff on Federal Jack that's.
Well, it's all sourced. So I I don't just post stuff and then don't tell you where I got it. I actually post links to the original source. Now, if that original source website has been taken down for some reason or another, that's not my fault. But that's another reason why we have Federal Jack, is so that in case the other websites go down, we're kind of like an archive of all this, interesting knowledge that people, should have access to.
Yeah.
And we don't charge
that's
anybody.
Why I encourage people to buy your hard drives. You can buy a hard drive. It costs the hard drive
go
cost
to the store
as much
section.
as the hard drive costs.
Just click on the store section of Federal Jack, and it'll bring up the drop-down menu will come up, and you'll see the hard drive thing for it. I have to put the advertisement for it back up on the front, but that's why I have that. That's why I sell the hard drives. I buy the hard drives and I sell them pretty much. The money that I get, I'm not really making any money on it. Everything covers
the hard drive.
Yeah, well, not only it pays for the hard drive because the hard drives are expensive and shipping's expensive. Plus, I always give free movies with them, like Alex Jones's movies or stuff from Ben Stewart, like Kymatica and Esoteric Agenda. Dr. Len Horowitz, stuff that the people that say, "Hey, copy my movies and give them out."
Stuff that people need.
Yeah,
people need to get this stuff.
Videos and I put
people like you, Popeye. That's why I'm honored to have you co-host my show for me, and that's why I'm glad we're friends now. We need more people like you and like me that just want to get stuff out there, the information out there. I'm not trying to start a movement. I'm trying to just inform people. I'm trying to tell people this is crazy. If you think Fox News sounds crazy when they blame everybody, when you look into who's really to blame for all these problems, I say all these problems. It's hard to lump the world's problems.
He's not the top of the spear,
Yeah, and that's all we're trying to point out is, look, we're not saying that we're not saying that. What we're saying, no, here, this is what we are saying. What we are saying is things aren't what they seem. And when you're, and when somebody's showing you one hand, all the promises that they've made with one hand, and with the other hand, they're taking everything you own, you got to wonder who's really, who's in control if you can get pulled over for having a taillight out, and somehow that could escalate you being murdered, your family having to watch you being tased on the side of the road. I mean, is that authority?
Well, that's the cop. That's the cop that goes too far. And I actually witnessed that in my own building a couple weeks ago, that they tased a guy and beat the crap out of him, and the whole right side of his face. Well, yeah, the whole right side of his face was all caved in, and they said that was from when he fell, from when they tasered him, but he fell on his left side, and you can see it. I actually videoed it with my cell phone. You see it in the video. He's on his left side. So, we're a sick society as a whole, and blaming one person and singling one person out over one thing or one person out over – no. Look, we as a human race as a whole, we are like picture the human race like organisms inside the human body, and they all work to make the human body work and function. If there's a cancerous element inside the body naturally responds to that and tries to fend it off, fight it. Okay, and even though it's not successful, unless you have some of these cancer cures that are hidden from the public, your body tries to, even if it's a regular disease, it tries to fight it. Okay, well, we have a disease, and our bodies are trying to fight it, and the white T cells are the conspiracy theorists, the people that are called. We're not ashamed. Yeah, well,
we don't run around hiding.
We're people that are saying, "Hey, there's a problem."
Out in the daylight.
There's a problem. We have a sickness. Something's going on. I'm sick. And as a society, as a whole, we are sick, and that's why you end up having things like the New World Order and people like. Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger and evil bastards like that. We have them because they are an extension of stuff that we refuse to deal with.
Yeah, we've allowed them. Them.
They are a physical manifestation of stuff. You have to – the best thing I could tell you to do is go watch the movie Esoteric Agenda and then watch the sequel, which is called Kymatica. And for you diehard people that are really into like Christianity and stuff, it might screw with some of your beliefs, but you will maybe hopefully you'll have a little bit of an open mind. Anybody that's hardcore religious, not just Christians, but I find that a lot of people that are religious, like and Christians in the truth movement, they get hindered when their religion gets called into play.
Yeah,
like everything.
Leave it out.
Well, see, that's a problem.
Leave it out.
Yeah, but that's the problem is after a certain period of time, you have to address that issue.
Because, you're right, you do, because it's actually down to the core because it comes down to the hidden knowledge. All right, I know this sounds weird.
On a regular mind control level,
even regular people understand that information, knowledge is power. And that why do you think we live in such a grid where there's literally, now because of the way they're databasing all our information. You are literally just an algorithm.
Well, they check everything. They watch everything you do on the internet. What do you think the social networks are for?
Exactly. Well, I'm guilty. I use it.
Well, yeah, but I don't have one for my personal use. I don't have a Facebook for my personal use, and I don't have a personal Twitter. Everything is for the website, and that's it. The only thing I put on there is links for the website, or when we do the radio show, I put the links for I put it on there so people can listen to the show. But I don't put my personal information. I'm not like, hey, I'm at, I've had my cell phone ask me, do you want to link your Twitter to your cell phone so it'll put out where you're where you are? No, and I see that all the time on Twitter. I'm at such and such road and such at the Dairy Queen, and that's the phone tweeting that. That's not them doing it. That's the phone automatically doing it. And sometimes, and a lot of times they know, they don't care. They're like, oh, who cares? Who cares if they know where I am? And I'm like, wow. And it's not that
people think, well, it's because I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
if I'm not doing anything wrong, there's no reason to monitor me.
It's not, and it's not just that. They can frame you. They could say that, you know what I mean? The point is, they shouldn't be watching you to begin with. All right, it's
exactly.
creepy.
We have privacy.
Exactly.
Private property, privacy. These are things that are key, core values of an American. And we've been changed. We're changed to think now as a whole, as a society, that it's okay that you have to be out there like an open book. You can't be private. You don't have the right to expect privacy, but yes, you do.
Yep, you do. Well, guys, it's the end of the show. It's been a great 4 hours. Thanks for listening. Check us out next week on the Orion Radio Network. They were getting that. They were, insinuating almost like it was kind of creepy. But they weren't intimidating. They weren't mean or nasty. They were actually very polite. So they've obviously been well versed in how to disarm people through like verbally and through body language and stuff. In no way did I ever feel threatened by the two of them, which was it was disarming. I had woken up and I was expecting the maintenance people, and I kind of peeked out, and I wasn't sure who it was, but when I opened the door, it's when they said they were FBI and they wanted to speak, and I had the presence of mind enough to step outside and close my door and not let anybody, I won't let anybody come in my apartment. I don't care who you are. So I was able to at least have the presence of mind to do that, and they were only here for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It wasn't very long. The conversation was very civil. They tried to laugh and joke a few times with me. Obviously, that's to try to disarm you and try to calm you down or try to keep you, keep the situation at a regular, But they did ask questions. They wanted to know stuff about me. Not really invasive questions, actually. Pretty much intel gathering questions, but not even super intel gathering questions. That's why I was trying to figure out, because I was half asleep waking up while I was talking to them, and I wished I had the presence of mind to ask them, what would make you think, I don't know why I didn't say, what would make you think I would know if there was something going on. But literally they caught me off guard, and I was literally like, as I was talking to them, I as I said in the other show, I have a dog, a tiny little dog, and she tried, she'll run out the door. So I had grabbed her when I opened the door. So I got her in my arm. I'm wearing sweatpants and a T-shirt, no shoes, nothing. I'm in my socks. And these guys, as I guess they're trained, they always try to take a step into the door. And that's when I was like, no, we can do this outside. And I kind of put my hand up, my free hand, and we walked outside. Again, that was the only time they ever tried to do I guess intimidating or whatever, but they were very laid back. They were not like you see in the movies where the feds are wearing sunglasses and they're all up in your grill. In fact, these guys, neither one of them had sunglasses on. They looked me in the eyes when they spoke to me, but they wouldn't give me a business card. In fact, they basically asked me.
Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. When you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. Hell yeah. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now, I can't make you do it. You gotta look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now, I think you're gonna see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're gonna see a guy who will sacrifice him.
Questions, but then when I said, well, sure, if you get, in fact, when I was on the Alex Jones show about this on Friday too, and when I first spoken to Alex, as I spoke to him right after it happened on the phone, I was still a little pumped up, and I couldn't remember. You know, the adrenaline flows. Sometimes it's hard to remember the details. You have to wait until your brain calms down. And while I replayed this before I went on a show, I kept replaying the conversation because it just happened. So it was eating at me, and I kept replaying the conversation over and over and over again in my head. And I had asked for a business card. In fact, I had asked twice, and both times they had kind of blown it off and said, just call the hotline number. Now, when I called the FBI office down here later on, and I spoke to the whoever, I guess the front desk person or whatever, I said, is it normal for them not give out business cards? And she said, no, usually they always give out cards, and usually feds and cops like to, they always have cards for themselves. Even cops nowadays, patrolmen have their own cards. So it's kind of odd that they didn't give me a card, which is kind of creepy, because then that begs the question of, if they weren't really feds, were they New World Order types? Were they fake feds? Could they have been CIA? And you don't know. Could they have been NSA? Could they have been Defense Intelligence? You don't know. They wouldn't, they could have been just training too. They could have been fed, FBI in training. But the one guy definitely had military bearing. The one guy I spoke to. The other guy, not so much. He was kind of not really out of shape, but he was kind of what I guess in the he wasn't fat, he wasn't overweight, but he wasn't in tip top shape. Whereas the other guy, he had the crew cut. He not huge, but decent physique. You could tell he exercised and he worked out and kept himself in shape. He was very tight, high and tight with the way he dressed. So he was not, he was AJ squared away. He wasn't slacking. Like, his shirt wasn't sticking out. The other one was more of the laid back one. But neither one of them had firearms on them. So, I mean, it begs the question, were they really FBI agents? So that's when I called, and I called the local office, and I said, look, I want to know if these guys are real FBI agents, because if they're not, then it's creepy, and then you guys should know that there's somebody running around posing as FBI agents. Otherwise, if you guys can tell me who they really are, then at least I know they were real agents. All right, guys, we're going to break. When I get back, I'll finish the story, and then I'm going to get into a few other things. You're listening to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from Federal Jack. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Before we went to the break, I was telling you about a experience I had on Friday. Anyway, so long story short, they didn't seem very they weren't rude, they weren't threatening in any way. Honestly, I really, really think that they were I think somebody called them and said that we were some sort of extremist organization. And the reason I say that is because I've actually had this happen before with the whole fluoride thing. Because we about 6 months ago we put up a couple posters and I literally just taped them to like the outside of payphone, the little payphone enclosures and stuff. And we had I got pulled over by the local police, the night shift, and they said, oh, well, we got a call that there was an extremist group running around putting up flyers. And I was like, an extremist group? And she was like, yeah, that's exactly what they said they told us. And we were able to we actually recorded the when we got pulled over. It's up on one of our YouTube channels. But they were very cordial. In fact, they were really horrified when we educated them about fluoride and stuff, and I gave them some Oath Keepers stuff. And honestly, thinking back, if I wasn't caught off guard on Friday, I would have actually said to these the feds, hey, hold on, let me give you some Oath Keepers DVDs, check this out. But again, I was caught so off guard because I was half asleep. I literally woke up to them knocking on my door. That when you're caught off guard like that, you really don't you don't react like you think you would. And I've been beating myself up all weekend saying, oh, I should have said this or I should have said that. But there was no, they weren't rude or anything to me. They weren't threatening to me. They didn't come at me, and I'm not saying I wasn't scared of them. I'm saying they didn't come at me in a threatening manner. They didn't, they weren't like, hey, shut the F up or whatever. They were just wondering if and maybe they were feeling me.
For this team, because he knows when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for him. That's the team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals.
Yes, we will. Either we come together or we will all surely hang separately, whether it be now or 10 years from now. Eventually, everybody will have their day. So if we don't stand together for our freedom. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. This is Down the Rabbit Hole. It is Sunday, April 17th, 2011. And I have a bunch of stuff to get into. You guys probably might have heard me guest hosting on JJ's show, Against the Wall, just now with John Preston from 3 to 5. If you didn't, I'll give you a quick recap. On Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, I was awoke to two FBI agents, or who said they were FBI agents. They wouldn't give me business cards, and they weren't carrying any guns. But when I did call to complain to the FBI and to double check and see if they were agents, I never got a call back, so I guess that's a yes. Anyway, they stopped and they wanted to know if I had ever been contacted by homegrown terrorism and if I knew that somebody was really going to try to destroy the country and attack the country. Would I, really, would I say something? Meaning, like, if somebody had come to me, would I rat on them and say, oh my God, there's a terrorist? First of all, terrorists wouldn't come to me because they're created by the CIA. And I looked at him and I just said, like, a real bad guy or like one of these fake ones? And they said, no. I think they understood what I meant. They said, no, a real bad guy. And I said, oh, no, of course. If I knew there was a real threat, like a country invading or, some real, I won't say the word terrorist because that's so overblown, but some real negative threat against the country, how I would know before they would, you got me, you guys are the FBI, but apparently they wanted to know that if I knew of some foreboding like danger, would I say something? Which, of course, if somebody was going to really destroy and kill innocent civilians, of course I would try to stop it. Anybody in their right mind would. But that's not what they were